At the end of this section of the course, you will be able to describe the historical and current female experience of oppression in a society controlled by men. You will be able to define the term sexism, identify the negative impact of sexism on both women and men, and effectively challenge and undermine sexism using a variety of strategies. A cisgender man cannot truly understand a woman's experience of the world, but they can develop an awareness and understanding of sexism in order to adopt an anti-sexist perspective. Conversely, a cisgender woman cannot truly understand a man's perspective of the world, but can develop an awareness and understanding of the cost of sexism to men. Let's do a quick activity to identify examples of unequal treatment by gender.
I want you to take a moment to identify the correct historical examples of unfair treatment of women. 1. The right to vote. 2. Married women must travel on their husband's passport. 3. The right to own property. 4. Custody rights. 5. Tolerance of domestic violence. And 6. Prohibition on married women holding a job. Which of the above are examples?
All 6 are examples of unfair treatment because of gender. In many Western countries, women were not full political citizens until the early 20th century. It was not until the late 20th century when discrimination against women in jobs, pay, and promotion was made illegal. Although the role of women in the workplace has evolved, oppressive ideas about gender still persist. For example, the concept of the male breadwinner still lingers. What ideas might bubble to the surface if you heard that someone's wife out-earns their husband? For most men, the workplace is not a venue to discuss their inner lives, feelings, or needs. The workplace is a place to fit in and not stand out. It's a place to be tough, aggressive, and competitive. Although outright discrimination because of gender is less pervasive, sociologist Barbara Reskin refers to the concentration of women and men in certain occupations, industries, and levels in an organization as sex segregation. Kimmel and Haller, in their book, The Gendered Society, write, "Sex segregation in the workplace is so pervasive that it appears to be the natural order of things, the simple expression of women's and men's natural predispositions. Sex segregation starts early and continues throughout our work lives, and it has significant consequences for incomes and experiences." I'd like you to take a moment to answer the following question. Why are men overrepresented in dirty, dangerous jobs? Will this always be the case? I'd like you to take a moment to reflect on this assessment for learning question. What does the term sexism mean to you? In defining the word sexism, we will strive to avoid making simplistic claims about the nature of sexism in order to avoid the trap of seeing anti-sexist action as only an act of political correctness. Political correctness is an accusation. It refers to the excessive attention to the potential emotional impact of words and actions on those who are seen as outside the norm. Examples of political correctness include using the terms vertical challenged for short or personhole cover for manhole or inspection cover. The emphasis of the course is not on language reform or watching what you say by paying attention to an abstracted set of rules, but about building trusting relationships that lead to success and using questions to discern the impact of our choices. We build trust by engaging in speaking and doings that declare, "I can be trusted." We must all come to the recognition that when a formal or informal power balance exists in a relationship, one must pay strict attention to setting boundaries on one's behavior. You will need to pay strict attention to acting in line with an external set of professional standards when, number one, you feel powerful or successful, when you feel very comfortable in an organization or relationship, or when you are trying to become comfortable. I'd like you to take a moment now to reflect on which of the above resonates with you. Let's turn now to defining the concept of sexism. There are three possible ideas for its definition as follows. Number one, sexism is a deliberate conspiracy by men to remain in a position of dominance and privilege. Number two, it is a complex cluster of social and political forces and ideas about gender that predate the current generation of men and women. Or number three, it is a collection of cultural attitudes about the roles and abilities of each gender that both men and women are socialized into and reinvent each day through their actions. Let's unpack the first idea, that sexism is a deliberate conspiracy by men to remain in a position of dominance and privilege. I think that idea is too simplistic and does not acknowledge that the machinery of oppression predates the current generation of men and women. In other words, we did not construct the machinery. It exists and has always existed. Let's explore the second idea that could be used to define the term sexism. Perhaps sexism is just a cluster of social and political forces and ideas about gender that predate the current generation of men and women. I'd like to agree with that definition because no one in existence today created the current slate of gender norms that lead to unfair treatment. So let's consider that idea a valid way of thinking about sexism. Let's explore the third possible way of defining sexism. We could think of sexism as a collection of cultural attitudes about the roles and abilities of each gender that both men and women are socialized into and reinvent each day through their actions. And yes, I like that characterization of sexism. It is a living force that must be maintained and reinforced. This means it can be stopped if everyone takes ownership of not maintaining the machinery of oppression. We could use the term cultural knowledge to capture one aspect of this machinery. Cultural knowledge, then, is the sum total of ideas a culture holds about the roles of men and women. The nature of sexism has changed over the last 15 years. Sexism, like racism, is less overt and more subtle. Therefore, It is important to become discerning of statements and actions that create or promote an unfair or irrelevant distinction between genders. Sexism, then, can be defined as a complex cluster of social and political forces and ideas about gender that predate the current generation of men and women. It is also a collection of cultural attitudes about the roles and abilities of each gender. I'd like you to take the time now to identify which one of the two ideas you would use going forward to define sexism. In this activity, I'm going to get you to review a couple of statements or actions and decide if the statement or action is sexist. Seeking out the opinion of only male colleagues regardless of the issue. Is it or isn't it? The act may be the result of some real systemic differences between men and women. Perhaps male colleagues have more experience or are more numerous. Yet, it is important to challenge any justification for seeking out the opinion of only one gender. The above scenario is a subtle but real expression of sexism. A male complimenting a female on her clothes by saying, "You look very professional today." Is it or isn't it? We should strive to view sexism in two ways: as a specific interaction between individuals, as well as how their words and actions are perceived by society as a whole. The concept of being professional is something that could be used with both a male or female, and is a label that is perceived as good by society. Yet, we need to reflect on and be discerning that compliments must proceed from a well-established relationship. I'd like to explore some questions that you can use to determine if a comment or action is sexist within the context of a specific interaction between individuals. Here are 5 questions that could be used to assess whether the impact of the above statement is sexist. Number 1, does the compliment fall within the scope of my role? Number 2, is it integral to the success of my community of practice? Number 3, is it my responsibility to maintain the look of others? Number 4, might the person wonder, so do you mean I look like the other day? And number 5, do I have a relationship of trust or a relationship of sarcasm? I'd like you to consider going forward how you could adapt or adopt the above 5 questions when considering the impact of my actions or statements. A male colleague refers to an opinion as Lady Logic. The statement may spring from noble intentions. The speaker may feel that there is something very special about how women are socialized to view issues. Yet, it is important to challenge any justification of intent and always reflect on the impact of a statement through the lens of association. The above statement is sexist because of its real and perceived association with, for example, ideas about the inferior intelligence of women. What might be one example of the cost of sexism for men? The cost of sexism for women is well documented. At the start of this section, we explored historical and current examples of unfair treatment, such as the right to vote, married women having to travel on their husband's passport, the right to own property, custody rights, tolerance of domestic violence, and prohibition on married women holding a job, to name a few. What might the term microaggression mean? The term microaggression refers to inadvertent slights that over time add up and do harm. Examples of microaggression might include failing to learn how to pronounce a colleague's name, setting low expectations for individuals because of their membership in a group, anticipating the emotional response of someone because of their gender, expressing opinions about gender or race that is based on stereotypes, expecting someone to represent the perspectives of their gender or race, and assigning individuals tasks or roles that reinforce a particular gender role. The opposite of microaggression is the term microaffirmation. Within the context of this section of the course, microaffirmation means doing the opposite of any of the above examples of microaggression. Here are 4 tips for challenging and undermining sexism in your community of practice. Number 1, avoid exclusion through words which represent and carry sexist attitudes by paying attention to labels that render women invisible or devalue caring or feminine tasks. Number 2, avoid exclusion through actions by seeking out the opinions of male and female colleagues. Number 3, be aware of at least one form of microaggression and take steps to change your own pattern of behavior. And number 4, challenge sexism in others with whom you have a strong relationship.